It had been a day of cars and horns and people. Katie discovered that in a big city, the noises of the street go on all night. Orbie discovered that in a big city, you have to ride up in an elevator to get home. And they both learned that visiting Granny and Granddad was like going to a whole new world. Katie and her family were visiting Granny and Granddad. It was very exciting because their big city neighborhood was nothing like Katie and Orbie's. They hugged and played and visited Granny and Granddad all day, and now they were going to do something very special. The whole family was going to see a play. Katie put on her dress and her shiny shoes, then helped Orbie with his little bow tie. Granddad smiled at them and said they both looked very spiffy and sophisticated. In the hall, Katie and Orbie raced to push the button for the elevator. Orbie got there first, and he pushed the down button. When the elevator came, everybody got into it. Katie pushed the 0 button. 0 was the button for the ground floor. Orbie was a little worried by the elevator ride, so he held onto Katie's hand. She gave it a little squeeze, and he felt better. At the bottom of the ride, they stepped out of the elevator. A man in a fancy suit and hat said, "Good evening," and held open the outside door. Granny introduced Katie and Orbie to him. He smiled and said his name was Mendelssohn, the doorman, as he shook their hand. Katie and Orbie felt very grown up to be meeting such an important person. Outside, Katie asked where the car was. Granddad looked down at her and told her that in the big city there was another way to get around that was much faster than a car. Katie and Orbie stopped in their tracks. Were they taking a plane to the play? Granddad laughed and told them that they were taking a train. Well, Orbie spun around fast and burbled that trains were the best and he couldn't wait. He made his funny train sound and made everybody laugh. Dad caught him just before he bumped into an elderly lady walking 2 little dogs. He told Orbie that the special thing about this train was that it was underground. Orbie just couldn't imagine anything so amazing as riding in a train right underneath a city. Katie was having very different feelings about it. She held tightly to Granddad's hand and told them she was afraid. Orbie was puzzled. How could anybody be afraid of a train? She whispered to Granddad that she thought the big city was too heavy to be on top of a train. Dad looked at Granddad. When he was a little boy, he had thought the same thing. He told Katie that engineers were very clever people. They designed the underground trains. They made the train tunnels so strong that the city was not too heavy at all. Mom told her she would be perfectly safe, and Katie felt better. But I have to say, she was still a little nervous. They came to some stairs right beside a big store, and Granny told them this was the place for the train. Orbie said he thought there would be a station. Granny told him that the station was underground. In her city, they called the underground train a subway. As they walked down the stairs, people rushed past them. Katie held on to Granddad and Granny, and Orbie held on to Mom and Dad's hand. It was important in a big city to stay close to each other. At the bottom of the stairs, they came to an escalator. People were hurrying on and hurrying off. Orbie was so excited. At the bottom, there were tracks on either side of a long platform. Along each track was a yellow line. It ran all the way down to where there was a tunnel. The tunnels were at each end of each track. The track went into them and disappeared. Katie felt afraid. She couldn't help thinking of the big city up above her. Dad crouched down beside Katie. He showed her the yellow line. Dad told her that it was to keep people safe. No one was to step over the yellow line until the doors of the train opened. Dad pointed out that the people who built the subway were very concerned that all of their passengers were kept safe. Katie smiled at Dad. That made her happy, and she did feel a little more relaxed. All of a sudden, there was a rumble. Orbie became very excited. In a flash, a train shot out of the tunnel and roared to a stop right in front of the family. Granddad felt Katie's hand tighten. He gently squeezed hers back. He told her that the fun part was about to begin. The doors of the train opened, people hurried out, and then people hurried in. Katie's family stepped in and found that inside, it didn't look exactly like the trains above ground. It looked sort of like a bus inside. Mom helped Katie into her seat, but Orbie preferred to stand up and hold onto the pole. As they all sat down, a whistle sounded, and the doors closed. With a little jerk, the train moved out of the station. It got dark outside as the train went into the tunnel. Occasionally, there were lights going by. Orbie was having a great ride as his feet lifted off the floor. Inside the train car, people were reading and talking and snoozing. Katie could see that they were all very relaxed, and at last, she started to relax too. Orbie was talking a mile a minute about how fast the train was going and where were they now. Dad just couldn't keep up with him. It made Katie giggle. The giggle grew, and soon it became a laugh of delight, and it was great fun to be on a train under the city. After 2 stops, they arrived at their destination. When they tried to get up and get ready to get off, the train was going so fast they could barely move forward. By this time, both Katie and Orbie were laughing so hard that other people in the train laughed too. Orbie grabbed onto a pole. It was just in time. The train screeched to a stop, and Orbie spun around the pole to the other side. When the doors opened, they all held hands, then scooted off to the theater. They had a wonderful time at the theater that night. But the thing they remembered most was their very first ever subway train ride. They told Mendelssohn all about it when they got back to Granny and Granddad's apartment. And I'm sure if you ever get to ride a subway one day, you'll remember it too. It's a lot of fun.
Did you know? Did you know? You can make the outdoors even more colorful. With colored chalk, you can draw pretty pictures on the sidewalk and driveway. Or you can play hopscotch with your friends. But if it's your very best drawing ever, you better take a photograph, because the colors wash away when the rain comes.